The sound of a crowded room faded to nothing as the sharp, echoing tone of a single voice pierced through the tension. Ibrahim Traoré, Burkina Faso's youngest revolutionary leader, sat in silence, his gaze locked on Jasmine Crockett as she spoke. Her words weren't just facts. They were an emotional thunderclap that rattled the very core of his beliefs. Sometimes the truth doesn't just change the conversation, it changes the person listening to it. Introduction and setup. It was a day like no other, at the International Summit on Global Justice. Held in the grandeur of an ancient hall, the marble floors gleamed with the reflection of the harsh, fluorescent lights above. The air was thick with the scent of stale coffee and fresh ambition. Leaders, diplomats, and journalists filled the room, each preoccupied with their own agendas, their own narratives. But for Ibrahim, today was different. He could feel it, the weight of his journey, the struggles he'd faced to become the president of Burkina Faso, was heavy on his shoulders. His people depended on him for change, for justice, change that often felt so out of reach. Yet, his resolve was unwavering. He had done the impossible. He had led an uprising against a corrupt regime and redefined a nation's future. Across the room, the American Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett stood tall, her figure framed by the golden light streaming from the windows. She had been invited as a guest speaker to discuss the future of African autonomy and the power dynamics between Africa and the West. She was the youngest African-American woman to represent Texas in Congress, a rising star whose future seemed as boundless as her ideals. Traoré had heard of her, but he'd never really listened to her words. Not until now. The room grew quiet as Crockett approached the podium. She was a force. Her voice, steady and clear, cut through the din of political negotiations. But there was something about her presence that was almost palpable. It wasn't her power or title. It was the truth she carried, the weight of the people's voice in every syllable she spoke. "I am here not to tell you what you want to hear," she began, locking eyes with the room, "but what you need to hear, what the world needs to hear." The room was still and all eyes shifted to her, drawn by an invisible thread of curiosity and anticipation. Conflict or challenge introduced. It wasn't long before her speech hit a sharp, dissonant note. She spoke of colonialism, of a legacy still haunting the present day. Her words weren't polite, they weren't diplomatic, they were raw, they were passionate, and they were designed to expose uncomfortable truths. All across this world, nations have been torn apart by the greed of the few, she continued, her tone rising. But we cannot remain silent anymore. Africa must stop being the world's playground. It is not the West's to fix. It is Africa's time to rise, to take control. Her words rang through the room like a bell. It wasn't just her message that stung. It was the way she spoke, as though she wasn't afraid to burn bridges. And, in that moment, the room felt divided. Some applauded, others squirmed in their seats. Ibrahim felt a knot in his chest. He had spent so much of his life playing the role of a diplomat, speaking in the language of compromise. His people needed hope, not just words. And yet, what Jasmine Crockett had just delivered wasn't just words. It was the kind of truth that made everything else seem like a lie. He clenched his jaw, wondering how much longer he could sit there, his mind racing with what he was hearing. Midpoint revelation or twist. And then, it happened. Crockett paused, letting the silence fill the room. Her eyes turned toward Ibrahim, locking onto him with such intensity that it felt as though she could see right through him. "I know the weight you carry, President Traoré," she said, her voice quieter now but no less firm. "You carry the hopes of your people, their dreams for a future where their children can grow without fear. But that same weight can blind you if you're not careful. You have the power to change everything, but only if you can first change yourself." The room was silent. Ibrahim's heart skipped a beat. He hadn't anticipated this. He hadn't expected her to speak directly to him, to call him out in front of the world. His thoughts spiraled. Was she challenging his leadership? Or was she, in some way, offering him the truth he had always avoided? The power in her words was undeniable. She wasn't accusing him. She was holding up a mirror, showing him something he'd been reluctant to see. The truth of his own struggle, the truth of his own fears. "You are a man of strength," she continued, "but you cannot lead a people without first leading yourself. If you wish to free Africa, you must first free your heart. Only then will the chains truly break." Her words settled on him like a heavy fog. He had led a revolution, but had he truly freed his own soul? Had he, in his quest for justice, allowed himself to become just as shackled by fear, by the weight of his decisions as the very system he had overthrown? Climax. Emotional breakthrough. The room was still, the eyes of the world on Ibrahim Traoré. His chest tightened, and for the first time he felt vulnerable, exposed. The walls he had built around himself began to crumble. He stood up, his legs unsteady as he stepped forward, his heart racing. His voice was raw when he finally spoke, his words trembling as they escaped. "Thank you," he said, his voice cracking. "Thank you for reminding me of what I've lost, what I've forgotten in my pursuit of power. I've become so focused on freeing my people that I forgot to free myself." There was no applause, no cheers, only silence. But in that silence, something shifted. The tension in the room, the unease, seemed to dissolve. Traoré had admitted something he had never dared admit before, not even to himself. Crockett looked at him, her expression softening. She had not been there to tear him down, but to help him build himself back up. She had given him the greatest gift anyone could, the truth, delivered in a way that left him with no choice but to embrace it. Resolution and quiet closure. As the room began to come alive with murmurs, applause, and the buzz of excited chatter, Ibrahim Traoré stood there, alone in his moment. His heart was still pounding, but for the first time in a long time, he felt lighter. The truth had set him free. Not just as a leader, but as a man. Jasmine Crockett had left him speechless, not by criticizing his leadership, but by challenging him to evolve, to be better. And in doing so, she had changed him. The weight he had carried for so long, the weight of responsibility, the weight of a nation, no longer felt as heavy. He wasn't free of it, not yet, but he had taken the first step. He knew now that the battle wasn't just for his people, it was for himself, for the freedom to lead with a clear heart and a renewed spirit. As he walked out of the summit hall, the sun dipped low on the horizon, casting a soft glow over the city. The future still held uncertainty, but for the first time in years, Ibrahim Traoré was no longer afraid. Call to action. If this story touched your heart, consider subscribing for more inspiring tales of hope, healing, and unexpected kindness. Hit the like button and share this with someone who needs it today.